This is a video to show how I've been touching up my models using a variety of programs I've been using. This is 123D Catch. In this program it shows you all of the images you've captured. You put in the images and the website calculates all for you and creates this 3D model. Now the problem with this 3D model is that it's got holes, it's got parts of geometry which you don't necessarily want, and it's triangles. It's a triangular mesh rather than a quad mesh, which you may or may not want. So to fix this, I'll show you what I would do. So the first step would be to export it as an FBX. And the reason why an FBX is preferred to an OBJ is because if you export it as an OBJ, it'll export it all as one mesh. And if it's one mesh, you won't be able to distinguish between the three UV maps in this process. So I export it as the FBX, and then I put it into Mudbox. So I go into Mudbox here, and this is how it turns up once you just open it, because an FBX is an Autodesk extension. So you just open it, and in here you've got 4 different objects, all with their own separate textures assigned to them. So the only reason why I've got it in Mudbox right now is just so you can export it again as different pieces. So you just select them all, File, Export Selection, as an OBJ this time. And this OBJ selection will do what you want it to. So then you go into ZBrush, and this is my cleaned up model. This is how it looks like. So I can show you from the beginning how I've done it. So I can just go out of that and go and import what I've created. So bar now in Mudbox, that's what it would be. Open that. Mesh can't be imported if the current mesh is partially hidden. Okay, so because this mesh is hidden, it doesn't let me do it. So then I'll just unhide. See if I can unhide that. Just try one more time. Okay, so I'll just click that mesh there. This is a generic mesh, and try doing that. And this time it seems to be doing something. So the imported mesh contains unused vertices, and these are probably some of the errors that it encountered. So you just press yes, and then OK, and here it comes. So there's the mesh. So you have to press T for it to be in 3D mode, because otherwise this happens. So you got two different meshes, one which is in 2D mode, one which is in 3D mode. So just if that happens, just press Control N. Now with me, most people have XYZ turned on for the different axes, but I prefer to work just like it is in Mudbox. So that usually is either Y or Z. So this instance is Y. So now in here you should be able to tell, you press Control Shift, each piece is a different piece, which is exactly what you want. So now this comes to putting the textures on. So you go Texture, Import, and you go for the first texture and open that, and that would be texture 0. Now I believe I've already imported them all in before. So what you need to do when they're imported is, you see how these two here, they've got the same name, but then they're flipped. Now you need to flip the texture in ZBrush, because for some reason it doesn't. Everything's flipped. So you need to just click on the one you want. I don't know which one's the right way around and which one's not, so we can just test that out. So now just go into Texture Map, and then click on the texture, Now you see that's what would happen when it's flipped the wrong way around. So none of the mesh actually looks like it should be on that part. So go and flip it. So I don't know if I showed you where it is, where to flip it. So you just flip vertically here on that button there. So you just click on the texture you want, and that one seems to work on part of it. So you just Control Shift click on the part where the mesh looks good, and then you go into Polypaint and Polypaint from texture. So that's that part done. And then you just Control Shift click again, so that hides the right part, and then you go on to the next one. So it's the same process for however many textures you've got. And you just see that's texture 2, so let's try texture 1. So texture 1 doesn't have too much working, but it's got this wing, so you just click on the wing. So you need to unhide it all and click on the wing, and then go into Polypaint, Polypaint from texture. So I don't know if you noticed, but some of the quality got reduced from doing this system. So this here is normal mesh, and you press Polypaint and you see it gets reduced to however many polygons you got. So if you press Shift F, you can see that's a polygon count, and that's the quality of the mesh. So it does reduce it from there onwards. So the only way to fix that is to have a higher polygon mesh. So you can either subdivide it again in ZBrush, or if you're happy with the quality, just press Polypaint. Okay, so then go on to the next piece, and that would be this one here. So this is the final one, and then you just go texture map, and then texture 2. So that's that, and then Polypaint, Polypaint from texture. So now you should have your whole mesh in with all the textures. Now, final step would probably be just to clean up the mesh, because there's bits which you don't want. So you just go into front view, Control Shift click, and go into the rectangle mode, and then Control Shift Alt, and that will hide the geometry which you don't want. Now it doesn't do a perfect job, because you see there's still bits and pieces which you still might not like, so you can just try that again. Yes, what I did there was inverted, so I'll just go back to what I had, and then just do a bit finer selection. That's probably a bit too much. There. Okay, so that took most of it out. Now the rest can just be done with the lasso tool. There, so that's all gone. So it's not actually gone, it's all hidden. So the only way to actually delete it would be to press delete hidden button. So this is my shortcut key for delete hidden. I can't remember exactly where it would be in here. Just a second. So modify topology. So geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. So you do that, and then once that's done, you won't be able to get back what you've hidden. Another thing which might be useful is to put on double-sided mode. That makes it just easier to see all your holes, where they are and everything. And in the next video I'm just going to show you how to touch those up. Okay, so now I've got my model all UV mapped properly. I need to fix up all these holes. So what I've done is I've done two different meshes. From the original triangular mesh, you can see here it's being divided a bit more just to capture some more detail from the textures. I've created a quad mesh using the ZBrush tool, and that looks like this. So what that does is it just helps you model out and paint out any problems that occurred with the lower poly mesh, which is more understandable to the program rather than triangles. Now what I would have done is I would have used this mesh and did Dynamesh on it, which would have closed the hole down here in the bottom of the mesh. It would have closed all these small holes, and then I could fix them up later on. But what I've realized is that this didn't work, because if you check closely on this mesh, you can see that all of these quads are all broken at the bottom, and that's because we deleted the parts of the mesh which I didn't need. So then what I had to do is re-import the original mesh from 123D Catch, and then use that mesh. So here's that mesh, so that's that mesh by itself. And what I would have done is I used this mesh and pressed Dynamesh on it. This mesh doesn't have any, it's all one object, no polyframes, nothing. So this was the only way I could actually get Dynamesh to work and not crash ZBrush. And then once I managed to get Dynamesh on, as it was on the same position as the Mudbox model, I turned that one on and then pressed Project All. So that put in all of the paint in the right place. It projected the paint, and it projected it to be in exactly the same position as what I originally had, which was, yeah, the Mudbox file. So now I've got that done, I'm going to have to use this mesh as the next one I'm going to be continuing with. So I'm just going to rename that to Dynamesh and put that on to, I think press up, no, okay, so I think there's a reorder button somewhere, that one I think. No, it doesn't matter. What I wanted to do is just move this mesh higher up, but it shouldn't matter too much. So I'm going to do what I've done before, and that's just hide and delete the bits I don't need. Now it's easier to do the bigger process and then zoom in each time, because then you don't remove stuff that you maybe don't want to remove. So you see I've actually got that right, but this can be done using the lasso tool instead, which is a bit easier. Okay, now I'm hoping, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm hoping that now if I press delete hidden, should delete, yes, it has deleted it and it's kept the Dynamesh. It's what I wanted, because you see now it's got a hole at the bottom, and if I press, I think it's Control Shift and actually not Control Shift, it will be Control and drag. So Control is mask, but Control and drag just re-Dynameshes the model. So if I try that out now, hopefully that hole in the bottom, yeah, you see it's now closed that hole, which is what I wanted. So all these white patches would be where there were holes originally. So there was a big hole underneath the wing, which has been fixed. So now we can start fixing all the errors. Now first I'm going to try and focus on this piece of the mesh here, because that isn't needed at all, really. Now I could use lazy mouse and mask out where I don't want it to be, but I'm thinking if I just use the move tool, so BMT, and just move move this down, then hopefully that should generate the same result without too many errors. What's very good about Dynamesh is that you can completely destroy how the polygons look like, and then just it will fix it afterwards. See, I'm just pulling it down, trying to make it look a bit better. And now press Shift F. These are the polygons. So you see how it's all been stretched. I'll just Control Shift that now. It's fixed that, and you see it looks like it's created a hole, but I think that's just a bug. So you just usually shift and smooth out where it hasn't done a perfect job. You just check how that looks like. You see that? It seems to look a lot better. And there it looks like there's a big vein which is going out, but I think that's just part of what I've done. So if I just pull that in, smooth that out. Now you can see I'm smoothing the texture as well as the geometry. Now sometimes you'd want both, but this time around I think if I just turn off RGB, then it should. Actually, it doesn't seem to be working this time. Oh, I know why. Each time you press a button, Control, Shift, etc., they've got different tools on. So if you hold down Shift, you see the RGB still on. So you just click that away, and now it works. So now I can just see if I need to pull that down anymore, or if that's enough. I think that maybe pushed out a bit too much. Pull that away. Put that in. Okay, so that's one hole done. I'll do the painting a bit later on. Okay, so here, just smooth. Actually, it looks like more like a texture problem rather than a smoothing problem. And some of the details lost just because of well, the fairly low polygon count compared to what I've already got. So there's this hole, which is the next one to try and remove. So this one will be a bit trickier, but I think it may be easier to try and test out lazy mouse here. So lazy mouse is very helpful if we want to select areas of the mesh without well, in an easy way. So just need to find where it actually is. So just bear with me. Tool, texture, stroke. Yeah, it's stroke, lazy mouse, and then you just turn that on. I think you should just leave the default settings on, and then turn that down. I think it's Shift, no, Control. Okay, it's interesting. So with lazy mouse, it usually has backtrack mode. Usually has this line which follows your cursor, but in this instance it didn't seem to have that, so I'm just masking out the bits which are a hole, It may be easier to look at it without the texture. And it doesn't matter if you do a perfect job, because that can be fixed afterwards. Okay. So anything white would have been the hole. Just check if there's anything else. But no, that seems to be where the hole is located. So now I've got that selected. Well, it's actually deselected, so you just Control Shift and now everything else is deselected. Now I should be able to delete those polygons by this would be interesting. I'll just pause this video. Okay, so I worked out how to do it. So the way to do it would be to go back to how it was with it being masked, and then you group that mask. So now these are two different groups. So now you can select the group which you don't want, and then actually select the one you do want, and then you get the whole. Then you can do what you did before and press the delete hidden button. So now there's this mesh, and there's this tool which I believe is called the curved bridge tool, and that's helpful to add some geometry in between the holes. So you would just normally just put a brush and then shift select, and it works out what you're selecting, and then you do the same for the other hole. Shift select, and then hopefully it works out the in-between. Now that time didn't work, it created a mesh somewhere else. So let's try that again. So Control Shift, well just normal selection, and then Shift. Now that holds that one in. Okay. So I'll undo what I've done. It may be that I've still got the mask on, so I can just clear the mask there. Now now do it again, and then Shift. So that's one selection. So now you can see that that white line is what I've selected, and now you can do the same on the other side. So just draw roughly around where you want it to be, and hold down Shift. Now it's created a mesh. Not a very good mesh. It doesn't seem to be. It seems to have merged it in where in the middle. So we'll just have to try and fix that. So what I do is I'll just go to another brush, select this mesh. Oh, for some reason you can't move around. Okay, it's a new one on me. Okay, pause. Okay, so I now have the curved bridge tool working. The problem was that the size was flipped, so therefore the middle couldn't be seen. But now, if you just clicked it a couple times, it worked out which way to orientate it, and now I've got the hole. So now the problem is, you see they're not part of the same mesh. They seem to be separate pieces. So to fix that, you need to go into the inflate brush tool and then just press Alt and then just try and get the two pieces of the mesh to converge. So just do that throughout the whole of both of the sides of the model. It may be easier to hide the pieces which are in the way. So if you let's just change that brush stroke to rectangle. So rectangle, and then do that, and then the same on the top. So now easier to see what we're doing. Sometimes easier in safe frames. Well, not safe frames. Thinking of 3ds Max here. Shift F, which is polyframes. Be sure to not accidentally inflate the outside of the model, because that can sometimes happen by accident. We just hide the tail as well. There we go. So there it seems to have joined them together. If you do that, you see they're actually part of the same mesh. But on the other side, didn't seem to be the case. So here I can just smooth it out where it's a bit sharp. So okay, so we'll try this again. So you see this part is one of the things that happened when I did the Dynamesh again, so I'm just going to delete that. So if I go there and then press delete hidden, and now do Dynamesh again. Okay, so a couple errors happened, so hopefully you can just smooth those out. There we go. Still a couple of holes, but it's better than what it was. Okay, let's see how the back looks like. Okay, that looks good. Just it's like it was before, just a bit too hard edged. So I'm going to smooth that out, see how it looks here. Yep. Okay, that's fine. Now, the hull doesn't need to be perfect, it's just to show that there isn't actually any geometry there. It can be, if it doesn't look amazing, you can be changed afterwards. So just need to try and move these two bits together. Probably use a move tool to just move them up and down. I think there's another one there, so just use the inflate tool. So anywhere where it looks like there's a couple problems, just make it so there's a bigger problem, and then Dynamesh will fix it. Hopefully. Okay. So now looks like most of those errors are gone. So now I'll just save this again. Good. Okay, so you see this bit here is fairly flat, so that can just be smoothed out. But imagine it'd probably be better to project this Dynamesh back onto one of the models with the texture maps, with the UV maps, so you can see better what we're doing. So we use the original high quality one. So what you do is you have both of these on, you've selected the Dynamesh, that's the one, that's the source, and the other one's a target, anything else that's visible as a target. So and then you press project all. And he says, would you like to project the poly paint? And you say yes. There we go. Now hopefully shouldn't have merged the holes again, so we'll just check that out. So just turn off that one. Okay, yep, good. So the hole down there is completely white. Yeah, and here where we fixed it before, you can tell that it hasn't understood that there's no mesh in there, but in here, okay, yeah, so we fixed it on the Dynamesh, which had paint originally, but now doesn't, so we'll just need to just use the textures from around to get the paint back. Okay. So, any other problems with the geometry? I think there seems to be a problem here. There seems to be a hole where there shouldn't be. Even in the original mesh, it shows that, but I don't think. No, that's definitely not right. So we'll just fix that now. Should be a fairly easy fix. Just use the move tool and push it down. Smooth that out, making sure that you're not smoothing the color. Okay. So that looks pretty good. So this hole looks a bit too cylindrical to me. So if we just try and make it look a bit better, using the move tool, just pushing it up, smoothing out any problems. See where it's tried to use the mesh to put up where there's no hole anymore. There we go. So most of the painting will be done in Mudbox because it's got better projection painting tools and cloning tools compared to ZBrush, and it's a lot better at keeping the detail of the textures. Okay, now I think the back here, the back hole looks a bit too large on the left side, so I'll just pull that in a bit. Pull that up. Smooth that out a bit. Pull this out. Okay. This probably needs to be pulled up. Because the tail's not part of the tree trunk. Same on this side. Okay, so I believe most of the general modeling pieces have been fixed. So now it's what's left to do is save it and go on to Mudbox. And with Mudbox, it should be able to handle the polygon mesh, but if it's not, then all you're really looking for is just fixing the small problems. Then you can fix like all the white areas. They can be fixed. So you actually want quite a high, quite a dense UV map for this. So yeah, we'll look into that in a bit. Okay, so we've got our mesh here in ZBrush, and to get it into Mudbox, we're going to need to have some UV maps. Now we did have some UV maps before, but now because it's been dynameshed, it's lost those UV maps. So with UV maps, you need quite a low polygon mesh to actually create one in ZBrush, and this is quite high. It's on 178,000 polygons. So to just get that lower, you just change the resolution to a number where you still have all the details. I wouldn't lose some of the main details, like it wouldn't close the holes where we've just already fixed it, and it wouldn't destroy the mesh too much. But all we need is just a low polygon mesh to fix it. So you just press Dynamesh and you should get something like this. So this is a lower polygon mesh. You can see the quality of the textures and everything has been lost, as it's all done with poly paint. I think it's called poly paint. Yeah, it's called poly paint. Now it should be ready to just press the UV button, the UV master button. So we've got Dynamesh there, and only one of those is open. So we go into Z plugins, UV master, and there is no symmetry in this model, so just turn that off. And I believe it's only one poly group. Yep. So unwrap all would unwrap all of the subtools visible. That's only if they're switched on. So mine is switched off. So that could work, but it's safer to just use this button so you can UV map the layer you're on. So hopefully this should give us something. It's working at the top there. Okay, so now it's done. So now if you just press the Morph UV button, you can see it's now created the UV mesh. So now you've got that done, you need to increase, so you can, now you've got all that done, so you can just turn off Dynamesh because all the main problems are being fixed from Dynamesh. You can just check if we've done this properly. See if there's any holes. Okay, so there still is one hole, it looks like, so just, actually it's not, it's just one of those bugs again. So just turn off Dynamesh, go into one view and turn on your high polygon mesh. And yeah, firstly just project the low polygon mesh onto the high poly mesh. So just press project all. So that seems to have worked, I think. And you still have to be careful to not get these errors being pushed in with the project all button. Okay, so now you just need to press Ctrl D. What that'll do is divide the model. So now it's got double the amount of polygons. And do the same process again. Project all. Good. Now turn that one off. So some more of the detail is being captured. You can see the texture is coming slowly back. Okay, so just remember to smooth out these small errors. Okay, and now do it one more time. So just Control D and turn on this one. Project all. Okay. So now it looks like most of the detail. So just go into the other one. Actually, not all of the detail is there yet. You can still tell a small difference if you zoom into the model. So we may need to subdivide it one more time. Just each time we subdivide it, we need to keep track of all these fixes we've been doing. So otherwise it will create some pretty drastic errors. Okay. Yeah, you can see that one's been trying. They've been trying to get that one to come together when it shouldn't be. Okay, there we go. And now we've got the right polygon mesh. It should be okay to just push that down afterwards. Once we fixed all the paint in my box. So just subdivide it one more time. So from 180,000 polygons to 721,000. Put that one on and project. It's take a bit longer to do. Okay, so that's done. So the same as before. Smooth out the errors. What's good about all these subdivisions in ZBrush is that it uses when you're moving around, it uses the low poly mesh. So it doesn't matter how many subdivisions you've got, because it only really renders it out once you've stopped moving the camera around. You can see if moving around, it's got the low poly mesh showing, and you stop and the high poly mesh comes up. Okay, so most of that is now complete. So now to save your file. Yep. Just check again if you've got all the UVs, which you do. Now we just need to export it. So export, and then call it 3 Barnell ZBrush. While it's doing that, go into my box. So this was the file I tried testing it out with, and the problem was, like I said before, was the UVs. So just delete that mesh and import the new one. Just keep all, press OK. Now in here, the clipping planes seem to be quite far, well, the extent of the clipping planes don't seem to be working very well, and they're on near and far are on maximum and minimum. So you just go into Scale Tool and just change the values down by 0.1. So now hopefully be able to move around the scene without any issues, and you can just check here. See, the UVs were there. Well, they did show a second ago. You just need to click model. I'm pretty sure they're there. So turn off the grid, turn off any mesh errors so you don't see those red dots appearing, and W's wireframe, so you see it's got the highest subdivision level on. So it's probably best to click on your group and then rebuild the subdivision levels. Now I believe that's on display. So just mesh, not display, mesh, rebuild subdivision levels. Okay, good. So it's found 3 lower subdivision levels. So just press W, and on my box to go up and down the subdivisions is page down and page up. So page down, page down, page down. So that's what it's found, and that just makes it easier for my box to use the file. So next thing, now I've got the actual model in, is to get the UVs. Now the UVs still are in ZBrush. The actual texture is still in ZBrush, so we're going to need to bake the poly paint into the geometry. So at the moment the poly paint's on, and we need to do the exact opposite of what we did. We need to somehow create a texture from what we've got. So clone texture, maybe the right tool. Nope. I'll come back